Hello everyone, got 4 dirty jokes for you today. So a farmer ordered a high-tech milking machine. Since the equipment arrived when his wife was out of town, he decided to test it on himself first. So, he inserted his manhood into the equipment, turned on the switch, and everything else was automatic. Soon, he found that the equipment provided him with much more pleasure than his wife did. When the fun was over, though, he quickly realized that he couldn't remove the instrument from his member. He read the manual but didn't find any useful information on how to disengage himself. He tried every button on the instrument, but still without success. Finally, he decided to call the supplier's customer service hotline with his cell phone. "Hello, I just bought a milking machine from your company. It works fantastic, but how do I remove it from the cow's udder?" "Don't worry," replied the customer service rep. "The machine will release automatically once it's collected 2 gallons. Have a nice day." So Joe and his buddy Jim were known around town as a little less than clever, when they weren't drunk, that is. One day, digging a ditch, while their foreman sits on a lawn chair in the shade, drinking lemonade. It's a hot day, and Joe starts wondering why the foreman isn't doing any of the work. "Hey, Jim," he asks. "How come we're down here digging the ditch, and the boss is up there, drinking lemonade in the shade?" "Dunno," Jim replies, and they go back to digging. After a while, Joe decides he needs to know. "I'm gonna go ask him." He climbs up out of the ditch and goes over to the foreman. "Hey, boss. How come me and Jim are down there digging the ditch, and you're up here drinking lemonade?" The foreman looks at Joe and says, "Well, because I have intelligence and you don't." Joe scratches his head for a moment, then asks, "What's intelligence?" The foreman considers this and says, "Well, let me give you some." He holds his hand up in front of the trunk of a big oak. "Hit my hand as hard as you can." Joe shrugs, rears back, and swings. At the last moment, the foreman pulls his hand out of the way, and Joe punches the tree instead. "What you do that for?" he cries. The foreman smiles. "I just gave you some intelligence." Joe heads back into the ditch, considering this. After a while, Jim asks him, "So what did he say?" Joe says, slowly, he says it's because he has a lot of intelligence. "And I have a little bit of intelligence. And you don't have any intelligence at all." Jim asks, "What's intelligence?" Joe replies, "I'm not really sure, but he gave me some, and I'm gonna give some to you." Joe holds his hand up in front of his face. "Hit my hand as hard as you can." So a New York attorney representing a wealthy art collector called and asked to speak to his client. "Saul, I have some good news and I have some bad news." The art collector replied, "You know, I've had an awful day, Jack, so let's hear the good news first." The lawyer said, "Well, I met with your wife today, and she informed me that she has invested only $5,000 in 2 very nice pictures that she thinks will bring somewhere between 15 and 20 million. And I think she could be right." Saul replied enthusiastically, "Holy cow. Well done. My wife is a brilliant businesswoman, isn't she? You've just made my day. Now I know I can handle the bad news." "What is it?" "The pictures are of you and your secretary." So a man was driving through West Texas one spring evening. The road was deserted and he had not seen a soul for what seemed like hours. Suddenly his car started to cough and splutter and the engine slowly died away, leaving him sitting on the side of the road in total silence. He popped the hood and looked to see if there was anything that he could do to get it going again. Unfortunately, he had a limited knowledge of cars, so all he could do was look at the engine. Feeling despondent as he stood looking at the gradually fading light of his flashlight, he cursed that he had not put in new batteries like he had promised himself. Suddenly, through the ink-eye shadows, came a deep voice. "It's your fuel pump." The man raised up quickly, striking his head on the underside of the hood. "Who said that?" he demanded. There were 2 horses standing in the fenced field alongside the road, and the man was amazed when the nearest of the 2 horses repeated, "It's your fuel pump. Tap it with your flashlight and try it again." Confused, the man tapped the fuel pump with his flashlight, turned the key, and sure enough, the engine roared to life. He muttered a short thanks to the horse and screeched away. When he reached the next town, he ran into the local bar. "Gimme a large whiskey, please," he said. A rancher sitting at the bar looked at the man's ashen face and asked, "What's wrong, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's unbelievable," the man said, and recalled the whole tale to the rancher. The rancher took a sip of his beer and looked thoughtful. "A horse, you say? Was it by any chance a white horse?" The man replied in the affirmative. "Yes, it was." "Am I crazy?" "No, you ain't crazy. In fact, you're lucky," said the rancher. "Because that black horse don't know shit about cars."